there's a voice like deep down inside that pulls you towards certain things. I believe that the knowledge and the wisdom, because underlying the reason why I do all of this, the passion behind all of this is I would love to see a world where people are living fully in their design, in more awareness, in more consciousness. And even just a little tiny bit of that will help change your life, will help align you in the direction where you're going to actually feel more joy and satisfaction and happiness in general. And isn't that really truly what we all want?
My guest today is Jai Bind, who is an astrologer, an intuitive, and she works with gene keys and human design. And today, she's going to show you how all of these different modalities can help you better understand yourselves and all of the relationships that you are in. So, Jai, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to see you. For the people who don't know, we actually met in Egypt and
Mm-hmm.
we got to spend 2 weeks together and we had some conversations. And you did a presentation to our group about human design, which I was already familiar with. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just really excited to connect with you. So it's really good to see you. And I know we're going to have an amazing collaborative conversation. But before we start, I have to tell you a funny story about human design.
Okay.
So in 2017, I went out with this man. And one of the very first questions he asked me was if I knew human design and if I knew what I was. I'd never heard of it before. And the very next day, he made me take a test and tell him what I was. And then fast forward, like, I don't know, weeks or months later, we wound up dating for 2 years. I found out that if I had not been a generator to his manifestor, he would not have dated me.
Interesting.
So I would love for you to weigh in on why somebody would take something like this subject, human design, astrology, gene keys, seriously enough to want to know how to partner with someone that they were going to be in a significant relationship, and why the people watching should watch and listen to this conversation.
Okay, I love those questions. So, first of all, I mean, that story just sounds like it was someone who was so into it and who kind of understood the dynamic that happens between two people when you put their charts together, because human design has a lot to do with understanding how your aura works, understanding your strategy, and understanding your authority. And when you step into those, does that design, that unique self that you are, you actually uncover um the way and the kind of like, not the trajectory, but the path forward starts to become a little bit easier. And you do start to recognize that around other people with different types of auras, you're going to have a different experience. So you can do this thing, and I might be jumping way ahead for some people who are new to human design, but just like, you've heard in astrology, maybe you have, that you can put two people's charts together and compare and see like the compatibility. You can do the same thing with human design. And so the two charts basically become one, and they show you information about how the relationship together and the two people will interact together. So it seems like this is what he was really looking to find, someone who was going to, really kind of vibe in a more harmonious way than have a lot of friction, is my guess as to that. But some people are going to take that seriously. I teach human design because I feel like it's so important for us to step into our purpose and know our unique design. And the reason why you should listen to this podcast is because you're going to receive a lot of information, and this conversation is going to be super intuitive and it's going to flow. And I always say this to people: if you find yourself just here listening to this podcast, you were meant to listen to it. And the wisdom that comes through all the topics that we cover, like human design, gene keys, astrology, healing journeys, it's exactly what you need to hear in this moment. And you may receive some gems of wisdom within the conversation and the topics that come up. So stay with us.
I love that. That's beautifully put. Well, since you mentioned healing, and there's a reason that you got into this, will you share your story in whatever way you'd like to tell about how you came to this place right now?
I love that question. So I was born in Argentina and lived in Argentina until I was about 8 years old. At 8 years old, my family decided to move to the United States, to California specifically. And that, to sum it up, was the most traumatic. It was like the first time that in my life as a child, I experienced a huge trauma. And, on the outside, probably didn't seem like anything was going on, but on the inside, it was the scariest thing of my life. I had to let go of my friends, even my pets. Like I had two cats and I was so attached to them and they were like my cats. So it was just super like this intense uprooting that kind of like ripped away my roots. So we land in the United States in California and we start, obviously attending school and, learning English. And that was a huge part of the fear was we're not even going to know the language and all that stuff. Luckily, as kids, me and my brother and my sister, we learned very fast, mostly watching Disney movies. I'd love to tell you about that because it's like you learn quick as a kid, but that stuck with me for like basically my whole life. And fast forward, like a little side note to that, at this point in my life, I know all these things about myself. Like I know very well my astrology, my human design, my gene keys, and I am a mental projector and I only have two defined centers and everything below the throat is open, which basically means I am just super sensitive to other people's energies and I'll absorb other people's like emotions and even identities and like stress. Like I just take on all of this stuff from other people and then it feels magnified inside of me. So if someone's like feeling this kind of intense turmoil, it'll like drive me crazy inside. And for a long time, because I obviously wasn't aware of that, looking back, every experience happened exactly as it was supposed to. Because to get where I am today, I had to go through all the difficulties. But at that time, I thought something was wrong with me for a long time. I'm like, I felt like I never fit in. I never really was like a whole groups and crowd kind of person. I would force myself to participate in things like that, especially like, high school and things like that. But honestly, I was not at all meant for like large crowds. I mean, I didn't know that. And then eventually, so funny, I was having a conversation with a friend a couple of days ago, and we were talking about college for some reason. And I was mentioning that when my sister is older, a year and a half older, she decided to leave the house. So both of us, being the two daughters, we have a younger brother, had a very difficult situation with my mom. And I say this very lovingly, and I have a beautiful relationship with my mom now. Like we've healed all of this. I've gone through a lot to get to where I am today, but it was narcissistic abuse growing up and also chosen by me to experience, by the way, at a soul level. And so we both were so like it was just so intense for us, especially the daughters were treated worse than the son. And my sister was like, I got to get out of here. So the minute she turned 18, she left, she went to college, and she was doing her thing for a year until I graduated high school and I was supposed to start college. I wanted to go to UCLA like so bad because she got in right away from high school, but I didn't. And I ended up going to like a transfer school, like Santa Monica College, that had a great transfer program directly into UCLA. Like everybody that didn't get in just went to Santa Monica College. And so my sister, for some reason, she pulled me into that experience of moving out of the house, but I never wanted to move out. I would have so loved to live like, however, we lived kind of far. at least like a 30 to 45-minute drive. And I was like so happy to just stay home and have a car and drive there and back every day. But no, I was pulled out of the comfort zone. And eventually, actually, my last year of college, I moved back home when my sister decided she was going to go study abroad. So my whole life, I've was like, I can't do this. I can't, too many people, it's too many things. I feel like something's wrong with me. And in that whole time, I'm trying to follow what my mom wants me to do, which is to obviously get an education. That's the whole reason why we left Argentina, all that stuff. And there was so much pressure to like become somebody, but it was through the lens of what we're most of us used to, like, gotta go to school, get an education, then get a job, blah blah blah. And I thought, I was like, well, I'm really drawn to like being a teacher. And I didn't know where that was coming from. I was like, I think I'm a teacher. I want to be a teacher. So I thought I wanted to go literally become a university professor. But one day when I graduated UCLA, I had literally had enough of Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is, now I could live there because I know myself and I know how to like handle my energy. But at that time, it was overwhelming. And I wanted to like exit the crazy concrete jungle. So I decided to move to Boulder, Colorado, but only because my brother was living there going to school. And I was like, oh, I feel safe. Like I was always scared. I was always like scared about like going outside. Like for some reason, I always felt unsafe or I didn't know what was safe. So I was just living in this like intense fear and anxiety, like 24/7. But ended up moving to Boulder, Colorado. And that's when my real, true, like journey of like the dark night of the soul that we often call it, I started to go into that. And it all began with I got invited to a peyote ceremony.
Why does it always start with psychedelics?
I don't know. But I got invited, and actually, in that ceremony, I had this very, very profound spiritual experience, and it happened in the morning. Every time I talk about it, I start getting emotional. It was that powerful. So it happened in the morning during the ceremony where a woman, like she represents all women, but a woman is chosen to bring in the water in the morning and pray over the water and pass the water around, and everybody drinks it. And it's everything in these ceremonies is super intentional. And I had never seen anything like that before. Like I didn't know that you could pray over like the food that you were going to eat. Like no idea. You know, I would never knew intention like that. So just being and seeing and observing that just like did something to me. It's like it reminded me of something that I had long lost, forgotten, you know? And the morning after, when that water was being passed around, somebody asked me to speak, and I was like, bleh! Like I cried and sobbed as I was talking, and I couldn't. It's like it all came out, like all those years of like tension and like not knowing who I was and the pressure and all this stuff. It just like it melted, and it was really intense because everyone else started crying because I was like so emotional. And so, but I was grateful. It was a gratitude that I like cannot even describe what it felt like. You know, I felt like my heart just like burst open. And then I felt my grandmother, who had actually passed away when I was 18, literally holding me and hugging me. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and that was the first time that I had experienced like the presence of her who had passed away, right? Like the spiritual presence of her actually with me. I mean, there had been little glimpses here and there. Like every time I saw butterflies, I knew it was her. And I felt deep connection, like she was still there, even though she wasn't. But this ceremony just blew something open. And from that point on, it's like it started like the ball started rolling. But instead of going up, first, you have to go down. You know, you got to go to the deep depths of the underworld and deal with all the shit that you've been repressing. And so that was like I got into a relationship actually with someone in the peyote community that was a shaman, a roadman, we were together for 5 years. So I ran so many ceremonies with him. I learned so many amazing and powerful things, but that relationship itself was the most intense, toxic relationship for me because it wasn't in alignment. And I was forcing myself, I was doing the same thing that I had always been doing my entire life. And so, a few years later, I start to realize, what am I doing? Something's not right. But every single experience led, like one thing led to the next. And my mind started to open and open and open and like receive and receive and receive. And slowly, little by little, I started to literally shed parts of me that were not me, that I thought were me, but were not, so that the true me could come out. And it took a long time. And if you hear me talking now, I'm like a totally different person than I was back then. But it took like years and years and years for me to like finally like for that to open. It's like that, for that rose or that flower to just open the door, to open for me to start doing the real work.
Wow, I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you shared that with everybody because I know when people watch these things, they see parts of themselves.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able to find a way to get rid of your anxiety, to get rid of these feelings and these thoughts that are holding you back from having this amazing life experience. Like, could you even imagined being in Egypt under those conditions? Never. You were barely driving out of your house.
Right.
So that's a pretty far way to come. So this is kind of an yeah, this is going to be kind of an unfair question for you because it's like asking me which one's my favorite child, but you are very versed in astrology. You are very versed in human design. You are very versed in gene keys. Do you have a favorite, a go-to, something that's rises to the top and why?
The answer is no, because when I do readings for people, and this was a progression that happened. I started to study astrology first.
Okay.
I For a long time I admired astrologers. I was like in over my head, like I don't know what it is, but it's so intriguing to me. Like I've always been very drawn to studying. Like I love reading books. I love teaching myself things. There's a drive to learn that is like unstoppable inside of me. And this is why I've gotten to where I am today, because I have not stopped. Like I live it and breathe it, and I'm not even kidding, every single day of my life. Which
That's who you want to have do your reading, by the way, is that person.
that's hilarious. So I first dove into astrology, and I'm so glad I did, because I feel like astrology holds a very powerful foundational information about who you are.
Okay.
And when you know your astrology, there's these different like aspects or facets of yourself that you start to see. Oh, I am like this one thing, like all together. This is me, right? Like you can see your chart and you got all the little different planets and signs and houses, and it seems like there's all these separate parts of you, but the reality is that all those pieces make the whole of like who you are, because you are the embodiment of your chart and you know yourself better than anyone else. You know what I mean? So I love how the astrology gives you a bigger perspective as well, not just in terms of like your life destiny, your purpose, like your mission, in terms of like what you're here to do, what you're here to like grow, the places that you're here to grow, and what you're here to leave behind and walk away from, and what's kind of like the biggest lesson that you chose to experience in this life. Because I always tell people, you chose this chart. Like your soul chose the time and the place and the location that you were going to be born in, and the family and the mom and the dad. Like it's hard to believe, like when you're first like starting to come into these kinds of modalities. It's like, really? Well, yes, I really believe that, because when you get to a certain point in your healing journey, you look back and you're like, oh my God, all the things, I just got chills all over my body. All the things that I thought were wrong and terrible And I felt like such a victim during those experiences were exactly what I needed to experience in order for me to like come out of the cave and like, or come out of the prison or whatever, you know, literally. And so then you start to find gratitude for all of it. So started with astrology.
Well, can
Then,
I pause for 1 second? Because I want to say something
yeah.
that's, I'm so glad that you said that, because this comes up in the comments all the time. Why in the world would I pick this? I don't believe that I picked my parents. I don't believe that I picked myself. The very first video that really launched my channel was a series of 63 videos that I created that were download after a very powerful 5-MeO DMT journey when I was on the other side and I had an experience with Source. And Source reminded me that now it was time to begin my life's purpose. And I got this download that became 63 videos. And the first one that I was directed to create was You Picked It All. You're the actor, you're the director, you're the producer, because without having every single one of those experiences, the strength of your legs, the intellect that you have, the place that you're born, the family and the people that surround you, without that, you wouldn't get to a certain place to have these experiences you set up to have for yourself. And we look at them from a human perspective of, this is negative. Why would I choose something negative for myself? Why would a child put itself in danger to be in this situation? But I think if you can get to the higher perspective, which is that we are a soul having a human experience, then you understand if the soul can never be harmed, the experience is more like a video game, a very serious video game that we take very seriously. It feels very real because it is very real. I don't want to take away from anybody. But on a soul level, if we can't be harmed, we can experience all of these things that we are not. And then it somehow, I think, refines us. And I'd love you to speak to that and what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Earth School. Like
Yes.
if anybody has heard of Dolores Cannon,
Mhm.
or if you haven't heard of Dolores Cannon, and you feel drawn to kind of go down this rabbit hole, I would recommend her work. But
A
she,
large, large, large body of work, by the way.
yes, yes. But she talks about this being like an earth school, and that really resonates with me. Whereas the soul, I guess, is this aspect of us that yearns to like evolve and grow through experience. So this is actually, I mean, I can take this way. This is something I teach in my moon goddess training. The
Oh my
story
gosh, yes. Why not? Yes.
story of creation of the universe.
Okay.
So it starts with this, a single dot, a being that is breathing, like sleeping and breathing. One day he wakes up. Basically, he opens his eyes and he asks two questions. Who am I? And then another question comes. Who can I become? And when he asks that question, that's when the Big Bang happens. And spirit literally creates spirit and vibration, energy and vibration create matter. And in the matter, in the space of the matter, which is where we live, you start to have, which is the third dimension. So basically, the dimensions are created. And in this third dimension, we are still part of the higher dimensions. We are just seeing the world through the perspective of the third dimension, which is limited to the third dimension. And so, if you can expand your mind to see that there is another perspective, a wider, a more expansive perspective to look at your life. And then beyond that, there's an even wider and more expansive perspective. And the more expansive you get, the more you realize how meaningless like all the little things that you experience are, because it's all a part of the process of this like one being just wanting to know himself or herself, right? And in that process, he separated himself into like 1,000 pieces so he could experience every single aspect. And so, you, because you have consciousness, and because the all is consciousness, right? The all is mind, is one of the laws of the universe. Consciousness is God to me. Okay. And that consciousness, that cosmic mind is inside of us. So we're like, we have it within ourselves. We have like a sort of an ability to tap into the greater mind, if you could say it that way, through our consciousness, which means that if that is the case, then we are the bigger consciousness just experiencing itself from the small perspective that is us. And so when you realize that, everything changes, because then you just recognize that, oh, if this is my job, is to just be me, to just live life, to just experience all these things, like maybe I could start having a little fun with it. Maybe I can laugh at it a little bit more. Maybe I can like get curious about certain things. Maybe I can ask myself, oh, I wonder what lesson is hidden behind this relationship. I wonder why I'm getting triggered in this way. Wow, look what's coming up. Like there's just it's a different way of looking at life. And like you said, you stop taking things so seriously because you realize, and you start owning all the experiences, and it becomes this like, all right, I'm all in then. If this is what I'm supposed to be doing, just being here and experiencing it and watching and living it, okay, I'm all in. Like you got my attention. Like let's see where this goes. And then they start to play with it. And then what happens is you start to actually heal, and you start to actually
Mm.
evolve. And then life starts to actually become more fun. And then
Oh
you
my gosh. I'm so
experience.
glad you shared this.
Yeah. Yeah, you become like a child again. Like, oh, like I came here to have fun. I didn't come here to like get all like pushed down to the ground and defeated. Like I came here to like actually enjoy the just the process of it. Like so it lets go of the pressure of like I need to be this, I need to do that. I was told my whole life that life needs to be this way, and if it's not, like that whole perspective just like becomes non important, because
It's
there's a
taking your
whole
power
nother.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started to say astrology was the first modality that you really came to understand and use. And then you started to say what came next.
Hmm. So the second thing that landed on my lap was the gene keys.
Okay, which I am not really familiar with that I know.
It's funny because there was a point, the third thing was human design, but there was a point after I was already studying human design, and it was at the perfect time that I was supposed to discover it. Some people like understand this right from the beginning. But for me, it was like a discovery, an epiphany, a breakthrough that needed to happen within me in my process to understand the connection between all three systems. And it was the fact
Mm.
that they are all based off of the tropical Western chart in astrology.
What does that mean? I've never heard of that
It
before.
means that there's 64 gene keys. So do you know the I Ching?
No, I don't.
The I
And our
Ching.
audience probably may not either.
Okay. The I Ching is an ancient Chinese oracle that was believed to have been, all the stories of the where the systems come from are actually really fun to study. But the story of the I Ching is that there was this young man who came across a turtle, and it's always about the hero's journey. Like someone sets off to discover themselves, goes through this crazy experience, and then eventually comes back home. But that really means that they come back home to their heart. But he finds this turtle, and the turtle's like talking to him, and then in the turtle's back, he sees the I Ching, basically. It's like unveiled to him on a turtle's back, which there's a lot of symbolism there. We don't have to go into that, but the I Ching has these 64 hexagrams, which are combinations of yin and yang energy. And it's supposed to be like all the combinations. And there's a connection to DNA, because within the aspect of DNA, there's like the codon and the like, I'm not like a biologist or anything like that, but I know that there are, the codon rings and things like that. And in DNA, there's like specific connections, and the number 64 is very significant within that aspect of it. But that's where these 64 hexagrams come from, which speak to the experience of life.
Hmm.
Fast forward, so ancient Chinese oracle. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, fast forward to the gene keys, and human design, because in human design, there are 64 gates. In the gene keys, there's 64 gene keys. So they're both jumping off of that original I Ching, 64 I Chings, and
Hmm.
they're sort of like an evolution of it. The human design is more of a masculine perspective of the self that tells you your strategy and your authority. So, like, easy steps to follow to align yourself in life. But the gene keys is much more feminine and contemplative, at least to me.
Okay.
So when the gene keys landed in my lap, it blew my mind because I loved the language of the gene keys. It's very meditative. It's like poetry. You know, Richard Rudd is who channeled the gene keys, and both human design and gene keys were channeled um,
Mm.
in these very like 3 day. Well, the human design was a little longer, but it was sort of like they went into a trance for like 3 days or a whole week, and then the information started coming through. That's what it means to have channeled it. And the gene keys was so beautiful and like just such a beautiful addition to understanding my own purpose, because the gene keys talks about what is your life's work, how do you evolve the most, when you start evolving and transmuting your shadows into gifts, what is that true light that starts to shine through, like an egg that cracks and the light is inside of it and it comes out, it's freed, right? And then what is your true purpose, which is about being, not doing,
Mm.
and how to heal deep seated wounds within relationships. And then once you do that work, how to fully activate your prosperity in your life. So that's the flow of the gene keys. So, but it's very feminine because you have these spheres in your profile, and each sphere has like one number, and that number corresponds to one of the gene keys. And then you go to the book and you open it up and you read that chapter, and it's like this beautiful poetic way of explaining the shadow of that gene key, the gift of that gene key, and then the city. And these are like phases of the evolution of the energy. But everything, like the shadow lives within the gift, and the gift lives within the shadow. The city, which translates to divine gift, actually transcends both the shadow and the gift. It just kind of enters into the divine space. And so it's very beautiful in that way. And then human design came into my life, and I wanted to study it more. I had learned about it like years ago, but it wasn't time. And so when it came back to me again, I was ready. I took a actual course, and that's when I discovered that these these placements in the human design and in the gene keys are, you can find them in your astrology chart. They're the same. Like your life's work in the gene keys is your sun in the your personality sun in the human design. And all of it's like, so I was like, wait, all these planets, like how does this become, how do you get planets in human design? Like what is that about? And so I started to just dig deeper, and I discovered that they all base it off of the Western astrology. So the fact that I had studied astrology first, then the gene keys, and then the human design, and then came to have this like breakthrough epiphany, I was mind blown. And from that moment, I literally was like, the systems were now inside of each other. And when I do readings, I intuitively flow from one to the other. Like I'm just guided. Like I listen to someone tell me why they want to do the reading and what's going to be the most important thing. What do they need to get out of this? And then right away, I'm like, we need to look at this person's strategy in human design, or we need to go into the gene keys, or we need to look at this aspect of astrology. So I don't have one that's my favorite because they're interwoven between each other for me now. Like in this beautiful, like intuitive process that just naturally happens when I'm like sitting in front of someone and like giving them a reading.
Okay, that's so interesting. I'm glad you explained it that way too, because I think most of the people who are watching have understood that you can go to a website, you can enter in your date of birth, the time that you were born and where you were born, and you can look at your astrology chart. And there are breakdowns to where is your moon? Where is your sun? What is your, all these different aspects that you can look at and you can read it and you can understand it. You don't, it's great to go to an astrologer and you can dig in deep. And that's one part of it. You can also do a similar thing with human design. It's the same process. They want the same things. I don't know what it is for the gene keys, but I
Same.
think the beauty is the intertwining of all three of them to give a better 360-degree view
Yeah.
instead of that flatter view of this is one thing here, one thing here, and one thing here. So, how do you learn more? And is it good for someone to at least peripherally look something up before they go to understand a little bit more about themselves so that they understand the language that's being spoken when somebody does a reading for them with this?
This is a really good segue to talk about what it how important it is for you to follow like your intuition, or you can call it your strategy and authority, because for some people maybe you'll be drawn to astrology and you're like, I have this urge to like look at my astrology, and I say go for it. Like listen to that, there's like a voice, you know what, like underneath, like deep down inside, that sort of like pulls you towards certain things. And this is what I would say. It's like you need to go and study the thing that's calling you the most. And you may not even be called to study any of it, and that's fine, because I believe that the knowledge and the wisdom, because underlying the reason why I do all of this, the passion behind all of this is I would love to see a world, maybe this is my vision, where people are living in fully in their design, in more awareness, in more consciousness. And even just a little tiny bit of that will help change your life, will help, align you in the direction where you're going to actually feel more joy and, satisfaction and happiness in general. And isn't that really truly what we all want? So that's the underlying reason for doing any of it. But the sometimes the it's the right timing. Like I wasn't ready to study human design when it showed up for me like years ago. Someone showed it to me. I even bought a book, and that book I've not even touched it. It's been years. It's like it was not in alignment, and I was trying to force the study of it, and when I let it go, I realized it just wasn't time. So I believe that the right system that you're supposed to study now is going to come to you now. Or maybe you feel drawn to get, maybe you're curious about, I actually want to see what all the three can, the wisdom between all the three can bring me, and maybe you're like ready to dive into that. It is hard to find that though, because most people either do astrology or only astrology, only human design, or only gene keys. And the gene keys itself is much more of like a self study and self contemplative process, not necessarily that someone can read your chart and then you know everything about it. It takes time to like contemplate your gene keys. So I always remind people like that one's going to be probably the longest, where you really have to do your own self work. But understanding all of three of them may be what really is, grabbing your curiosity. So it depends, yeah, if you want to go just see what it looks like. Sometimes when you just look at your chart, it does something to you. It's crazy, like, because there's a frequency, there's an energy. It's like it's who you are. And then when you look at it, it's like, wow, so intriguing. I don't know what it means, but it's like I feel something about like this is me. And that's what my human design teacher said, that when he first saw his chart, he had no idea about any of it. And his friend showed him his chart, and he just had like a visceral reaction to it. Like, I know that that's me. I don't know what it means, but I know that that's me. So there's it's like the play that we're talking about. And maybe partly it's like your soul is like it's the right overall. I just feel like if the time is right, you will feel drawn to whichever system, or maybe all three. So you can go out there and pull your chart and all this stuff and kind of start on your own. And there's lots of websites you can find where you can pull your charts. Um, but yeah, so I don't know that that answered your question, but I
It
just,
did.
okay,
It
okay.
did. I had a very similar experience that you did.
Mhm.
back in 2017 when I dated that guy and I shared the story of the human design. And because he was into it, I wanted to understand it. So, like you, I bought a book, I read it, I tried to understand it. I just wasn't drawn to it. It didn't do that much for me. But then years later, when I got introduced to Enneagram, that really helped me understand who I was. And it super helped me understand all the people around me. And I was very drawn to it. But I have to say that when you talked in Egypt, so this is many years later, I felt way more drawn to it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I had forgotten about that. There's that other aspect. And to your point, sometimes we're just not ready. We need to have more experiences. We need to live more life. We need to get to the point where something is an aha and it's opened up for us to be able to absorb it better. So I'm glad that you explained that because I think when people watch a video and you don't feel drawn to it, you pull a book, you buy a book on Amazon because you think that you're going to be drawn to it. You'll know immediately if you're not. And if you're not, you shouldn't read it. You should put it away. Maybe you'll come back to it later. Maybe you'll never come back to it. But I think you have to listen to that inner voice and that guidance to figure out where our time is so precious. Where do we want to spend our time? Where do we want to invest in what we need to know? And you will know internally what that is.
Mhm. Yeah, and when you first encounter something like this, that can ultimately be really powerfully like activating and like mind opening. The first time you encounter it, think of that as, without even thinking about it. For those of you that have, been seen it like maybe years ago, but also didn't really feel connected to it, that was like the planting of the seed. And
Mm.
it started to grow and germinate like inside of you, and then eventually it was ready to grow. So that's kind of how I look at that, because that's what I feel like it was for me. I saw it, I bought a book, and I read the book, but it was like just not sitting. And it's because I had to go study astrology first, and then the gene keys, and then human design. That was my flow. That's how it was going to land, and for me to get ready to have that like breakthrough epiphany that I had about all three of systems, using them all together interchangeably.
So when people have an individual reading, they get to know themselves better. But how can they also use that to help them with the relationships with the people that are around them?
So the thing, every system will give you something, different. Like for example, when it comes to relationships, the Venus, the planet Venus represents what you truly desire in relationship. And the planet Mars represents how you go get what you desire. And so, depending on where your Venus is and your Mars is going to have a lot to do with the interactions that you desire, that you expect, that you like are going to feel more comfortable with other people. And so, if that's not, if like your true desire isn't being met, then it's probably not going to be, the best relationship for you. And in the gene keys, there's like a whole sequence to go into relationship. There's a sphere that's called the purpose of your relationships. There's a sphere that tells you who you attract in order to do the work that you need to do to heal the trauma and the triggers that show up in relationship. It tells you what your mental triggers are, your emotional triggers, like physical triggers, and then it takes you kind of back in time through these life cycles where you end up at the point of conception, and it tells you what is your core wound that you chose to experience in this lifetime, so that as you heal it for yourself, you heal it for the world. And then only then, till you get all the way through that, do you get to start to work on activating prosperity. I mean, this is what I mean. Like in the beginning, when I was talking about, it took me a long time to even get to a place where I could understand, like look back at life and be like, oh my God, all this happened for this reason, and everything led to another thing. Um, and then in the, human design, you can look at certain aspects of you that are going to, vibe or jive with other people, and how other people are going to perceive you, and how you're going to energetically tune into other people, and whether you have to be aware of your sensitivities, you know? And so learning your sensitivities, learning your gifts, learning your true desires, learning how what drives you and motivates you to go get what you desire, studying your deep wounding shadow patterns within relationship. I mean, that's what you get from all three of them. So they each have a different way, but they all talk about relationship, because relationship is the one place, the only place that we grow. You can't like
Oh,
sit
I love
here.
that you said that. I've been saying this for years and years and years. You can only truly know about yourself through your interactions with others. If you were in a deserted island, you might learn how resourceful you were, but you wouldn't learn a darn thing about yourself
True.
unless somebody else was introduced to that island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can sit there and meditate your whole life and study books and all this stuff. And then the minute you get into a relationship, you get triggered and you just lose your shit. That's that's when you start to heal.
Lose your shit and start to heal. Yeah, that's great. Well, so you touched on something that I think is such an important concept. It's a tough one to get to the place where you can do this all the time. And that is the concept in spirituality of everything is happening for me and not to me. Because at least a couple times a week, I have to remind myself that I have gotten back into my humanness where the shit is happening to me and I'm not happy about it. When no matter what it is, it's like a practice to get to the point where you can actually be grateful, because even if you don't understand why it's happening right now, you know that there's a bigger reason it's happening, even if you don't like what it's doing and the havoc it's wrecking in your life right now.
Mm-hmm. That's really where the true magic lives. Like there's this whole aspect about spirituality that's about like leaving your current life, like escaping and like rising up to the heavens, and like in that space everything is joy and bliss and happiness. And it's like that's the illusion. That's the disassociating from where true growth happens. Because if you go to real like spiritual teachers that really take you, to the place where everything happens, they're going to take you right back to where you wanted to escape from. And they're going to say, you got to sit right here with this, because right here is the answer. And it's almost like, the Buddha, that he was born in this rich, with rich life. He had so much money. He was like the son of an emperor or something like that. And he's like wants, and he's so protected, overprotected, that he know nothing about the world. So he goes out there and he sees poor people and starving people in his like kingdom and all this stuff. And he's like, why all this suffering? And then he's like trying to understand it. Like, and he's like going through the lessons of like, well, maybe I'm supposed to suffer through life, And eventually he gives up and he sits down by a tree and he's like, you know what? I give up. Maybe I'll never get this. And that's when he becomes enlightened and he realizes, oh, it's like the middle path. And it's like that whole idea of like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes in the mundane experience of life. What changes is the understanding and the perspective inside of you that literally completely changes your experience. So that's why people start in one place of existence, and then eventually, after a spiritual awakening or a true healing that happens within them, they feel like a completely different person. Because energetically, vibrationally, when you expand that awareness, you let in more of that universal, wisdom into your life. And so you actually start to love the mundane. You start to love like the chop wood, carry water life, Like, for example, what happened to me, I went from hating my mom to being like, oh my God, I love her, because look at her, she's an expression of spirit. And in her own, like, whatever craziness that at some point had perceived was like that, it's actually beautiful, because that is God also in her. And you start to see God in everybody. And that's what changes. And then the judgment goes away and you stop
Mm.
needing to control everything and for everything to be a certain way based off of your belief system. And you let everyone be who they are without judgment. You just let go. You like take a step back and then like, okay, how can I get out of my own way? That's literally the process that happens.
And then guess what? You step into your power. And if that weren't true, we wouldn't be having this conversation because we all know from being on the other side that when you are on the other side, you are love and a state of bliss and peace and eternity. And if we wanted to do that all the time for eternity, we wouldn't be here right now. There is a reason why our higher selves chose to come into this incarnation and have this experience. So there must be some type of value, whether it's a soul refinement, whether it's a deeper understanding, whether it's something we do just because it's so different from what we are. I don't know. I don't think any of us will know until we've gone back to the other side, but there must be a reason. So I believe that what you've said is completely true because of that.
Yeah, I've heard like I've studied so many things. I've even done like Kundalini yoga teacher training, and I remember something that they used to say in the training and in that whole community that oh, it just like skipped my mind. That's so funny. It was just in my mind. You were speaking to the experience of the earth. Okay, got it. So that earth, that having a human experience is a coveted thing. That because not all beings can come down to earth and have an experience. It's like an acceleration. It's like you go in to do it the hard way because that's how you grow faster. And you know what? This is another perspective that I've heard that also just kind of blew my mind, that beings that are born like with serious disabilities, where like they sit like children, right? You would think like, why would God make a child suffer like this, make them sit in a wheelchair, have seizures all day long? Like, why would that do that? And actually, that is one of the highest forms of like purification of your soul. And some souls choose that experience because they know that that's like fast track, right? Because in this world, at least from what I've studied on earth, we're in this, cycle of karma, which has to do with like you, and I don't know, where it all started. There's a lot of theories about it, but there's this, belief that there's karmic cycles and that we are, as we move from lifetime to lifetime, there are experiences where we've created karma that we have to resolve like later in life. And so life in general is this like healing and learning. It's the earth school, right? So we're learning from our experiences, but there are these things called the laws of the universe, and how they work is that every cause has an effect and every effect has a cause. And that process is going to take you through these waves, like highs and lows in life, but then also across lifetimes where there's the sort of the evolution of the soul. That's why the soul keeps wanting to come back to earth, because like, let's keep this thing going, let's keep this learning going, let's keep this evolution going. And yeah, so I feel like that's why, you know there's got to be something about like you said, a value that maybe we're never going to quite fully understand about this experience. But I've heard that it is one that a lot of souls actually want to take because they know how amazing it is to have it.
Yeah, there's actually, so I've interviewed so many different people and who have talked and touched on this topic. I want to share three things. Number one of the top 10 most popular videos on my channel is a man named Christian Sundberg, who remembers planning this life before he came here. And he explains how he was a soul walking through the cosmos and he encountered another soul. And he said that soul had a refinement about him that was magnificent, that he had never seen in another soul. And he said, whoa, what is this? How did you get this refinement? And that soul laughed and said, I had a physical life. And he said, a physical life. And he said, I went to this place called Earth. And he's like, I want to do that. And he said, yeah, that's what they all say. Go talk to your guides. And I had another near death experience person say that when they were on the other side, they were in an auditorium and the souls had gathered to listen to the recounting of the human experience that she had just lived. And she said the feeling from those other souls was a reverence. They were revering her for taking the chance to come and have this human experience because most souls would not come here. We're the daredevil souls coming to earth because we put on a veil. We forget that we're connected to everybody and everything, that we're not separate, and we are separated from that love of what we truly are and of God. And most souls will not take that on. And then the third and final thing was just fascinating, which connects back into your karma story, is that you mentioned everything is cause and effect, and we have to somehow resolve them. Most in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I interviewed a woman named Linda who had a near death experience and went to the other side, and she was given this box, and inside of it were these bubbles, not like anything that we have on earth. And each one of them was an individual encounter that she had had with somebody else on earth. And she said that there were like 20,000 of them or thousands of them. And she spent what would be the equivalent of many lifetimes sitting there, picking one up, going into it, becoming, reliving it from her perspective and from the other person's perspective until it was resolved where she understood and forgave herself, forgave somebody else, and resolved that karma. And she went through about 20,000 of these scenes and had many, many thousands more to go through, but then had to come back and resume her human life here. So
Wow.
if people are listening and they're looking for confirmations of the bigger picture of why we would do this, there is a lot of, I think, evidential information that people share. And the more that you can connect in, you connect those dots, and you are another dot that we are connecting for people to then be grateful for the experience that they're having and get themselves to the place where they can actually fall in love with their lives, good, bad, better, best, you know?
I love that. In the beginning of the interview, you asked me, what why should somebody stay to listen to this podcast? And right now I'm having this thought, which I often have, that you attracted this because it was time for you to hear whatever information was found here.
I just got goosebumps all over. Thank you.
Yeah. And I truly feel that. It's like when it's time, it's time. Like if you allow yourself to live in that magical, mysterious, like miracles abound space, you will be surprised at the magic that you actually start to bring into your life. Like you just have to start paying attention to the things that you are like, it's just a coincidence, but it's really not, These
Really
are
not.
beautiful synchronicities that you're calling them in because there's a deeper part of you that is ready, that wants to know more. You got to trust that. That's the beginning.
I love that you said that because, again, synchronicities are, I think, the universe's calling cards to remind us that we have planned this. So I would imagine that at about this point, and probably before this, the people who are watching are like, who is this lady and how can I connect with her? How can I work with her? So why don't you tell everybody what you offer, what you do, and how people can connect and work with you?
Thank you. I so appreciate being able to share that. So, I do personal readings, and then I also offer courses and reading and a moon goddess training, which is kind of like a year-long commitment. And the moon goddess training would be everything I teach all in one. And a personal reading, there's different options. Like it just depends on what you want. There's so many aspects to astrology that I know. Like I can do, I can look at astrology, human design, and gene keys in one session. You can do a starseed reading where if you want to find out your starseed ancestry, which is looking at the fixed stars in your chart and seeing if you have an Orion connection or a Lyran connection or Pleiades or Sirius, like that whole aspect I am also able to look at in a chart.
I've
Human
never
design
heard anybody say that before. I did not know that existed.
does.
Wow, I love learning something new every day here.
I love that. Yeah, so I do that, and then I do like human design map. I do past life regression. I mean, it's like I'm like the multi, I don't know how to describe it. I can do like I do a little bit of everything. So you can work personally with me one on one, or you can sign up for one of my classes. Like I teach astrology. I've taught a lot of astrology classes. I have a membership, a Starseed membership if you're into astrology. It is astrology based mostly. And like I said, I have the full kind of course that is the Moon Goddess training also available, and that is a live course that you we started already, but it's also not too late to join. But anyways, you can find everything at channelforgrace.com, and it's on Instagram at Channel for Grace. My YouTube channel is Channel for Grace. Like just follow that or Jai Gobind, and you will find me out there.
So, Jai, I think you're the Swiss Army knife of spiritual modalities. That's what you are. That's what you are.
I forgot too that I do Akashic record readings, and that's actually
Oh,
the Moon Goddess training is actually you learn you become certified as an Akashic record reader, but I have a very unique way of teaching what are the Akashic records and how to communicate and receive information from the Akashic.
we did not have enough time. I didn't even know that you did that. And I'm super fascinated by the Akashic records because so many people who've had near death experiences visit that and have experiences with it and understand why they came here and what multiple lifetimes and how they build on each other. So I think that that's a super fascinating topic. Well, Jai, I so enjoyed getting to know you in Egypt. I have enjoyed this conversation even more. I feel like the luckiest person to be able to have these conversations. And I want to thank you so much for what you are doing in your part in helping to raise the collective consciousness. And as you said, when you heal, help people uncover what they can heal in themselves, we heal the world.
Mm, yes. Thank you so much. This has been so fun, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here and share. I really like this year has been amazing because I feel like I have been in this little bubble, this little cave for a long time, just like, studying and getting, good and mastering what I love. And this year is the year where I'm being invited to come out of my cave. So you playing a piece of that is really beautiful for me and exciting for me. So thank you.
Oh, great. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.